Most of the time when I investigate hitting or engage in hitting discussions, more often than not anymore, I get frustrated because there's just too many conflicting views, and quite frankly, it's exhausting. And I'm just going to share what it is that I think is true, and this is where I'm at today. And so I think there's two kind of mistakes. There are swing errors and there are timing errors. And then a hitting coach, what his ultimate responsibility is to try to eliminate this as much as possible and eliminate this as much as possible. And there's lots of ways you can go about it, but hitting a ball is a sequence of events. And the way I make sense of it is I've got five elements to the swing that I think determine one's success. And the way I've labeled that is anticipation, initial impulse, acceleration, error correction, and deceleration. And I'm a math guy, so a lot of this is couched from a framework of mathematics, and it seems to work. And yet sometimes I'm hesitant to share it because it is very analytical. But I think it's true, and certainly the player doesn't have to understand all of this. But when he asks why, and you can explain why, sometimes it adds a lot of credibility, and you can get people to invest in it. So the first thing is how a player anticipates, and I've gone on record as saying aggression must precede discipline, and it's because of this anticipation component. It's the way a young player prepares to move on a ball, and anticipation is rooted in reaction times. That's simple reaction time, recognition, and choice. The more choices you give someone, the slower they become. The slower they become, all of this stuff might not matter if they aren't anticipating correctly. A lot of this becomes assumed at the higher levels, right? If you're looking for something to investigate, looks into Hicks's law. That's how we anticipate. But I heard something yesterday that I loved, and it goes with the next phase of a sequences, which is what I call an initial impulse. Now, when I was working with young players, oftentimes what I would want to do is I would want to create a higher impulse. And an impulse is just a force time product. It's how much force can you put into the ground and how quickly can you do it, knowing that baseball is a timed event. This T is often very small. We don't have all the time in the world to press into the ground. It's just this very fast twitch movement. So with young kids, when hitting a ball is predictable, they're not throwing off speeds, and counts often determine what pitch you're getting. You can often really create a big leg lift and drive into the ground, and that impulse was that force time product. Um, and what what I always knew was true, and I was always hesitant. Like the question becomes when to change is when pitchers start throwing unpredictable, and then you hear that ubiquitous term, get your foot down on time. For me, getting my foot down on time was always problematic because getting my foot down meant applying an impulse, and at the higher levels you can't always apply an impulse at the same moment in time because pitches are changing speeds. So I could never really um, put that piece of advice into action because getting my foot down on time meant providing an impulse, and then I got locked up on off speed pitches. So I do know that this idea of impulse flexibility is critical. Um, Again, if you go back to the most basic impulse curve, you've got this force time product, and the better hitter is the guy that can spike it higher. He pushes into the ground. He's using the ground to his advantage, and he can spike this thing. But again, if the impulse is inflexible, then I get locked up on off speed pitches. So getting your foot down on time only adds value if you can delay that spike. And that's what I have down here. If you can't delay the spike, now getting your foot down on time is going to be a recipe for getting locked up. So, this idea of impulse flexibility, this initial impulse is really critical depending on what level you're playing. For the young kids, it's just make that thing spike as high as possible. The older you get, it's delaying this. Now, this idea of acceleration is a vector. Um, yeah, we when I was first teaching it, it was all about being on plane, and now the more I watch high level hitters hit, you realize that direction is two. It's two components. Not only is it on plane this way, but then it's on plane this way. So there's two axes to which you have to recognize, and um, these two things go hand in hand. And what I heard yesterday is I heard this comment which I loved. It was out is up and down is out, and that really resonated with me. And the idea there was when you get into your get into your front side, if your focus is on going out, there's a better than average chance that you're going to move up and out of it. But if it's down and you can feel that push into the ground from a closed position, then you can create that path, that through it path, right? So this idea of these two things getting married together, where the higher the impulse you can create, potentially, if you're using it to your advantage, the better direction you can create too. And a lot of times when players cheat and they open up prematurely, not only does their impulse get affected, but their direction gets affected too. So, again, that phrase that I liked, which hit home, was out is up and down is out, meaning, feel the ground and ride the ground to create that better direction, and that acceleration. This idea of error correction, there's two components. I really think the only way we can manipulate this barrel is with the things that we're in contact with. So how do we move it with our upper body, and then how do we use the ground to our advantage? Certainly, the impulse flexibility allows me to error correct, but then this ability to move my barrel late in the window. So, in other words, if I start my swing and I'm tracking this thing out in front, and all of a sudden I get a two seamer, I still need this ability to make error corrections late. And maybe I can't, right? And a lot of times you'll hear people say that great hitters get jammed, and it's that idea that although we want the bat to move in this direction, pitchers are trying to challenge us. And when we make mistakes, and when we have a swing error by chance, it's the inability to move the barrel from an out to an in position. So I'm constantly want to be aware how critical it is to move the barrel from an out to an in position, potentially late in the swing, or this error correction component. And then the deceleration phase is this, just make sure that your path is a path that allows for success. Don't let how you slow a bat down be the reason you're not successful in the window. So one of the things I'll say is move your brick wall back, right? Like, don't let the finish line be the reason why you have to abort a proper bat path, right? So make sure that your deceleration component, whatever it is, isn't affecting your path through the window. So, um, I don't know if this makes sense. I believe it. Again, swing errors, timing errors, and when people talk about um, rhythm and tempo, what I try to do is I try to make sense of it in and how I understand the hitting process and how I understand it relates to these five things. So, hope that made sense.